Hello everyone and welcome to something a little bit different for today's video. So I've been replaying the Resident Evil 1 Biohazard Remake HD Remastered. It's quite a title, and it's one of my most favourite games of all time. So out of curiosity, I decided to turn on a ray-traced global illumination shader, and I was really surprised that it actually did something. Because for the shader to work, a game needs to have a working 3-dimensional depth buffer and actual models for the light calculations. With that in mind, it's pretty common knowledge that all of the classic Resident Evil games use pre-rendered 2-dimensional backgrounds. The remaster does actually have some fully 3D environments in it. They had to completely remake them because those specific scenes have some dynamic moving lights. They do stand out a little bit compared to the pre-rendered scenes though. But for the most part, the remaster just uses upscaled 2002 GameCube backgrounds, which were a tiny resolution to begin with. So if you play the game in HD on a modern screen, they're pretty blurry and not that detailed if you look too closely. But as I've discovered, if you enable the shader's debug mode, suddenly you can see all of the intricately detailed 3D models that make up the game's environments, in a much higher resolution. Now, I don't know if these are actually 3D models or just some kind of really fancy depth map, but they are dynamic and they react to moving characters and lights. Also, all of this might already be known, but I did a bunch of searching on the internet and I haven't seen anyone else talk about this. Maybe I'm just the only person sad enough to actually care about it. Either way, I think it's a pretty neat look at some impressive environment design. Every single frame and camera angle in this game is very carefully planned and quite literally packed to the rafters with detail and personality, and I absolutely love it. All those mushy, compressed GameCube models are now fully revealed, every bolt, rivet and piece of grating, every smoke-covered generator, every blood-soaked cloth, every ornate shelf covered in stuff, every flower petal, and every pumpkin? It also shows you some cool stuff that you wouldn't normally see, like this mounted ox head that actually has hair simulated on it. Or the giant snake, Yawn. I never noticed that it's covered in boils or some kind of mutation. Or this large generator-shaped blob, suddenly transformed and visible in its full glory. I always thought these were spoons or something? Turns out they're syringes. Huh. Now, because Resident Evil is a spooky game, a lot of that detail is shrouded in darkness and pretty hidden if you're just playing it normally. So I was surprised at how many small things I never noticed in the environments before. Like in the attic. Turn on the shader and suddenly all this stuff just appears out of the darkness. Or this hallway, where if you squint, you can kinda make out some tables and plants back there. I never noticed those pillars or those fancy spiral table legs before. Or this little vent hole thing with some pipes and stuff in it. I also never noticed these vents above the bed here. It also highlights some little tricks that the artists used, like the MO disc reader that was actually a GameCube in the original release, but for the remaster they disguised it. But of course the underlying model is, yep, still a GameCube. Or this part of the mansion in the background, which is just a giant 2D plane, even though it's fully modelled in other, even more complex areas. This is also pretty weird. This is the only ladder in the game that doesn't actually have a model. You just climb up into the air. This lamp is just floating above the ground. There's also this pole that just seems to be floating in the air for some reason. Spooky. And this text decal is actually just floating several inches away from the wall. And I always felt like something was off with this stairway. If you look at this camera angle, the wallpaper pattern doesn't match the perspective of the scene. And if you look at the underlying geometry, this is the only door in the game that has no model. It's just a flat wall. It makes me think that maybe that stairway was a last-minute addition, and it didn't quite get as much love as the rest of the game. Anyway, that's enough of me rambling and gushing about one of my favourite games. Thanks for watching. I know it isn't an animation, but I always like these little peeks behind the curtain of some of my favourite games and pieces of art. All of the ray trace shots in this video were captured using Reshade and the RTGI shader by Marty McFly. I'll put links to these in the description. So, bye for now.